Okay, perfect. I think we have enough people joined in. Uh, I will start the session now. So, before we begin, uh, welcome, good morning. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday morning. My name is Shubhang Bhattacharya. I'm the group head of marketing at ANA Associate. Uh, Today, we are going to talk about e-invoicing unlocked guidance for UAE businesses. Now, before we begin the webinar, just a few ground rules. Uh, as you would have noticed, most of you are on mute, but this doesn't mean that it's not going to be an interactive session. Throughout the session, you can use the chat option to put your questions forward. So I repeat, you can use the chat option to put your questions forward. At the end of the session, we will be going through all the questions and identifying some questions that we can answer on the spot. So towards the end of the session, we've kept some time for our experts to answer your questions. But please keep in mind, the Q&A session is for generic questions that are very similar to your business, or you need to know something which is very specific to your particular activity or your company. There will be an email ID and phone number at the end, and you can contact us and we can just tell you about it. Because it is not possible for us to give you a very specific kind of consultation right here. But if you have any generic questions or overarching questions, we'll be more than happy to answer that. Now, e-invoicing unlocked. Why are we picking e-invoicing for our webinar today? It's actually one of the most requested segments of information that we get from our clients. Now, ANA has registered over 25,000 businesses, and invoicing, accounting, bookkeeping is something that is always coming up after people register their business, especially for new businesses. Ever since compliance, VAT, corporate tax came into the picture, accounting is something that is simply that we cannot ignore it anymore. So to that end, we will be talking about e-invoicing today. We will be taking you through the intricacies of it, how you can do it. Uh, with me, I have two experts, Parth Seth, who is a senior tax consultant with us at ANA Associate, and Tania Thomas. She's also a tax consultant specializing in VAT compliance. So Parth and Tania will be taking you through the session today. At any given point of time, you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat option. With that, once again, I welcome you to today's webinar. I hope you have a fruitful session today. And yeah, over to you, Tania.
Thank you, Shubhang, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. So moving on, what we will be discussing in today's webinar.
Tania, I'm not able to hear you.
Good morning. Thank you.
No, still not able to hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Can you speak now?
Now speak. You're not.
I'll speak. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and thank you for the introduction, Shubham. So before we delve into the webinar, let me just give you a brief agenda as to what all we'll be discussing today about. So we'll be giving a basic concept and idea about what e-invoicing is, who all will fall under the scope of e-invoicing, what are the exclusions, we'll talk about the VAT groups, what will be the violations, and along with that, the corresponding penalties. And towards the end, as Shubhang said, we'll have a Q&A session as well. So before we talk about the concept of e-invoicing, as you all are aware, UAE was initially a tax haven country, but with the introduction of VAT in 2018 and then corporate tax pillar 2, now we have come all the way to e-invoicing. So it is quite obvious that the authorities have started introducing more compliance obligations for all the businesses in the UAE. Now, it was in the year 2024 that Ministry of Finance went on to launch the e-invoicing portal, signaling the new digital requirements for the businesses in the UAE. And following 2024, we have seen various ministerial decisions and along with that cabinet decisions detailing how e-invoicing will be implemented by the authorities who all will fall under the scope of e-invoicing, the exclusions, and along with that, we also have seen what will be the violations and the corresponding penalties of e-invoicing. Moving on to the next slide. Now talking about, now in layman's language, what is e-invoicing? So e-invoicing refers to the exchange of invoices between the seller and the buyer in an electronic format. Now, this does not indicate that any invoices, such as in the format of PDF, Word documents, or images, will count as e-invoicing. Now, what are certain elements and key concepts of e-invoicing? The first one is the applicability, who all will fall under the scope of e-invoicing. So, the first transaction that will be covered is business to business transaction. And the second category will be business to government entities. Now, unlike other countries like the GCC regions, Saudi Arabia, wherein business to consumer transactions are also included, currently in the UAE, e-invoicing does not cover B2C transactions. Now, this is primarily because any buyer, means the end consumer, they cannot be onboarded onto the PayPal network, because if they are not onboarded, they will not be able to receive the invoice. But there's an exception here. Now, companies who are in the retail sector, say for example, they have primarily most of their transactions are B2C. Now, in those cases, businesses will have to be still onboarded onto the PayPal network. The reason being, they will have purchases which they are making from third-party vendors, suppliers. So in order to receive invoices from those companies, they will have to be still onboarded onto the e-invoicing network. Now, unlike different countries, now how the e-invoices will work. So in different countries, different approaches are being used. So there are countries wherein QR codes are embedded on the e-invoices. But in UAE, what we will be following is a structured XML format. Now, this is referred to as pinned AE. Now, in this particular format or in this particular document, we will have around 51 set of elements. Now, this will detail information about the buyer, the supplier, the payment terms, and the invoice details. And it will look quite different from a normal tax invoice that we usually see. Now, once this invoice is generated by the ASP, which is an accredited service provider, it will be exchanged between the seller to the buyer. And then if all the details laid out in these invoice is correct as per the rules and regulations, then we will pass it on. That means we'll report it to the Federal Tax Authority. Now, why e-invoicing was introduced in the UAE? So over the last 8 years, VAT has been there in the country and it has contributed a significant amount of revenue towards the UAE economy. So in order to identify and address whether there's any unintentional or deliberate efforts made by companies out here to avoid VAT, e-invoicing was introduced. So with the introduction of this compliance, we can see most of the processes being automated by the business and thereby reducing any human intervention. Now, moving on to the next slide. This particular slide talks about the phased rollout timelines for e-invoicing. And the implementation of e-invoicing has been currently divided into 3 phases. Now, these 3 phases has been determined on the basis of the type of entity and how much revenue are they being generated. And for each of the three phases, there are two key milestones that has to be checked. One is, when is it required to appoint an accredited service provider, that is your ASP, and when is it that the companies have to start issuing the e-invoices through through the network. So the phase one talks about companies which are larger in size. So they have revenue more than 50 million. So for them, it is important that ASPs are appointed by 31st of July this year. That means 31st of July 2026. And from the beginning of next year, they will have to start issuing invoices through the e-invoicing network. The second phase that we'll talk about is your small and medium-sized enterprises. Now, this is for companies with having revenue less than 50 million. So for them, it is mandatory to appoint an ASP by 31st of March 2027, and they will have to start issuing invoices from the 1st of July 2027. So basically, the authorities here is giving us, a certain additional time for the smaller businesses to integrate their systems and processes. And the last phase or the last category that we have is for the government entities. Now, in case of the government entities, they will have to appoint an ASP by the 31st of March 2027. And then from 1st of October 2027, any transactions or any invoices will have to be issued through the e-invoicing network. Now, one important thing to keep in mind here is that it is always important to follow these particular timelines, because if you do not follow the timelines, there are corresponding penalties associated with it. And currently, as per the FTA rules and regulations, we have around 16 pre-approved e-invoicing the accredited service providers, and we are expecting more to be approved in the coming future. Now, when we determine the threshold, that means your revenue category, it is the gross income that is being reported as per the financial statements of the company. Moving on. Now, this is one of the key concepts about e-invoicing. Now, in this particular slide, we will be talking about how the flow of invoices will be right from the stage one, that means corner one, till the corner five. So as you can see in the particular slide, we have 5 main corners. Now, the first 2 corners pertains to the supplier, wherein we'll have the supplier's ERP software and we'll have the supplier's accredited service provider. While corner 3 and corner 4 pertains to the buyer and the buyer's ASP, and corner 5 will be the Federal Tax Authority. Now, once a transaction occurs, an invoice will be issued by the supplier's ERP software. Now, this invoice can be transmitted then to the appointed ASP of the supplier. The ASP's role here will be to validate the details mentioned in the invoice, to see whether all the 51 set of elements which is laid out by the authorities, is it there or not. If the invoice is validated and if all the details mentioned is correct, then what happens is this invoice will be then transmitted to the customers, to the buyer's ASP. And simultaneously, it will be also transferred or transmitted to the Federal Tax Authority. Now, before transmitting the invoice, the supplier's ASP can verify the details of the customer via the Open Peppol's directory facility, wherein if we enter the customer's ID, we will get all the details of the customer. Now, once the ASP of the buyer basically receives the invoice, their duty again is to validate the information. And if all the information listed out in the invoice is validated, what they will be doing is that they will send a message level status. That means a successful acknowledgement to the supplier's ASP that yes, the invoice received is duly correct as per the rules and regulations laid out. Then the buyer's ASP will transmit the invoice not only to the FTA authorities, but at the same time, it will be transmitted to the buyer's ERP software, wherein the transaction will be recorded in the books. Now, in any of the corresponding stages, if the validation of the details in the invoice becomes unsuccessful, then a negative message level status can be sent either by the supplier's ASP or by the buyer's ASP. And in that case, in order to cancel out, we will have to issue a credit note first, and this entire process will have to be repeated all over again. Now, in the going forward slides, we will be discussing about the exclusions, the exports, the VAT groups, what are the penalties, and this will be done by Parth. So, handing over it to Parth.
I don't think they have prepared. No, they are prepared.
Hello everyone. So we have a poll question here just for we will wait for 15 seconds to answer by everyone, and then we will move on to the next part of the session. Okay, majority people have answered correctly. So let's move on to the next part. So now next thing is how the e-invoicing regulation will be applicable to the VAT groups. So there are questions in the mind, say for which is what is the threshold limit for the VAT groups? How it is applicable to the VAT groups? Do each entity have to appoint ASPs, or only the representative entity needs to appoint ASPs? So now let's discuss this. So first of all, the threshold, revenue threshold, it is applicable to the each entity. Say for example, there are three entities in a VAT group. Each is having 20 million as the revenue. So total VAT groups turnover is more than 50 million. However, the entity's revenue, each the entity wise revenue is less than 50 million. So this entities as of now in the first phase need not to appoint ASP. In the second phase, this entity will be covered, but individually, not as a tax group. And in while issuing the e-invoicing in the second phase, they have to mention the TRN of the representative entity and not the individual entity. And the individual member entities need to apply for the TIN, which refers to tax identification number, and they can this identification number can be used while issuing the e-invoicing. So this is all about the e-invoice applicable to the VAT groups. Now we will move forward to the how this e-invoice regulations work in the export case. So when we are exporting goods or services to the foreign customers, the foreign buyer may or may not be registered with the PayPal network. So what we have to do is first we have to check from the PayPal directory. PayPal directory, we can search it in Google and it will be available there. So from the PayPal directory, we can search our buyer and we can check that whether they are registered with the PayPal network or not. If they are registered with the PayPal network, then we have to use their ID, that is specific ID, and we have to mention while issuing the e-invoice. And what if the buyer is not registered with the PayPal network? In that case, we have to use the dummy endpoint, and invoice need not to be shared via PayPal by the supplier, and but the supplier can share this invoice which electronically via email or something, as they are doing already separately. And overseas buyers are not required to register with UAE for the e-invoice thing as of now under the uh, uh, otherwise it is applicable under the UAE law specifically. Okay, now moving forward to the what are the exclusions from the. Okay, now we have another poll here for you guys. We will wait for 10-15 seconds again to answer you all guys. Can we have a poll, please? Yeah. Okay, we can see here the 70% of the people has answered correctly. It's Federal Tax Authority. Now we are moving forward to the next part of the exclusions. What are the exclusion to whom the e-invoice regulations are not applicable? First is the government entity when they are working in a sovereign capacity and not competing with the private sectors. Another is the airlines when they are issuing e-tickets to the international passengers, and also for the ancillary services they are provided by the airlines. Another is international transportation of the goods where the airway bill has been issued. So in these cases, e-invoices regulation are not applicable. And the last one is the financial services, which are exempted or subject to 0% tax rate. So to all this, businesses or transactions or entities, e-invoice regulations are not applicable. Now moving forward to the next, what are the other questions in the mind that may come which are clarified by the FTA as can an entity use a different ASP, that is accredited service provider, for the receiving and issuing the invoice? The answer is no, they should use the same ASP to issue and receiving the invoicing. Another question may come in the mind is if the self-billing applicable to the UAE-based customer for the import of goods and services where invoices are received from foreign customer. So this is the case where we are importing goods or services. Do we need to do this regulation apply to that entities also? As of now, as it is a very generic thing that the UAE regulatory authority cannot impose this provisions to the foreign customers. So as of now, this is also in this case, the e-invoices is not to be issued. Another question may come in the mind, what if the B2B business which are not registered for VAT, do they still need to implement and register for e-invoice? So the answer is yes. As mentioned by Tania, e-invoice is applicable to B2B, all the B2B and B2G transactions regardless of their registration, VAT registrations. Another question, she has already answered this, mentioned this earlier. Will the QR code needs to be printed on the invoice? Answer is no, it is not required as of now under the UAE e-invoicing regulations. So these are all the commonly asked questions we have covered here. We will cover your specific questions after we end up with the explanation. So now moving forward, there is another poll here. You guys have, we will open it for you and we'll wait for 10-15 seconds again. Can we have a poll, please? Yes. Okay, it's 50-50 between XRL UAE and Pint AE. So the correct answer is Pint AE. So now we will move forward to the next uh, slide. So here we are coming with the penalties as issued by the FTA. So if any entity failed to implement or appoint ASP within the timeline, that is as already mentioned by Tania. So if any entity fails to implement or appoint ASP within this timeline, the penalty is 5,000 dirhams per month or part thereof. There is no maximum capping here as of now. So if entity fail to implement this ASP or e-invoicing thing within the timeline, Say for example 3 months, then 15,000 penalty straight away it's there. Next is failure by the issuer to issue and transmit the electronic invoice or electronic credit note to the recipient through e-invoice. So in this case, within the timeline, this timeline is within 14 days, we have to issue the e-invoices once the transaction has happened. So under the VAT, it's based on this place of supply or time of supply. So within 14 days, we have to issue an invoice. And if we fail to do this, the penalty is 100 dirhams for each invoice up to the maximum of 5,000 dirhams per month. So say for example, if we miss 60 invoices or credit notes for the month, then maximum penalty for us will be the 5,000 dirhams, not 6,000 dirhams. Okay. And next is failure by issuer or the recipient to notify in case the system has failed of ASP or something, anything for any reason system has been failed. So if they do not report this thing within the timeline to the minister, then the penalty will be 1,000 dirhams for each day or part thereof. And there is here again, there is no maximum capping here. So the day you are missing the reporting thing to the authority, you have to pay the penalty for that. And failure by the issuer or recipient to notify the appointed ASP of changes of the data registered with the authority. As we all know, we have submitted some data, say for example, trade license, then anything about shareholder, about the authorized signatory, anything, whatever the information, if there are any changes in this information, and if we are not reporting this changes in the detail of the taxpayer within the timeline, then again the penalty is 1,000 dirham for each day or part thereof, and there is no maximum capping again here. So this is all the penalties associated with the invoice regulations. Now moving forward to the next part, how ANA can help, like how we as a consultant can help you in implementing this business, as we can assess your readiness and how this e-invoicing will impact your business. And also we will assist you with the ASP selection or integration support. So we can assist you also how you can integrate, and we will be with you while the whole integration process and ongoing compliance and risk mitigation also. So we are here to assist all the business in the UAE to seamlessly implement this evolving e-invoicing thing in the UAE. So with this, we are done with all the explanations as of now. So now we will open the Q&A session for all the participants. We'll just in the chat, we'll just see the questions that has been asked, and we will answer as much as we can.
Thank you, Parth. So I can see some questions already. First one from Uduman Hamid. He asks, if the company is in the service industry and based on service provided, how to invoice, and client base is mixed of international and local, and also mix of business clients and individual clients. Likewise, the cost of revenue is individual, consultant, and commission paid to individual. In this scenario, to what extent is e-invoicing applicable?
Just a minute, I'm reading the question.
So, Mr. Hamid, with respect to the e-invoicing element, now in terms of when you have a mix of both international and local, now in terms of local invoices, both the buyer and the supplier, they will have to be integrated on the PayPal network, and any invoices that is being issued between the seller by the seller will have to be transmitted to the buyer's ASP. But if in case the transaction pertains to an end consumer, then in that case, it is not necessary that you have to issue the invoices through the PayPal network. It's an option that is available to the companies. If you are doing it through the network, then it can be reported to the FTA. But for the end consumer, since they are not onboarded on the PayPal network, for them, you will have to share the invoices via mail itself. And in terms of the exports, when you talk about your international clients, if your client is located in a country wherein e-invoicing is applicable and they are already available or they are already onboarded on the PayPal network, then in that case, you can transmit the invoice through this particular e-invoicing network, wherein first it will move from the supplier, then to the supplier's ASP, and then to the buyer's ASP located probably in the foreign country. And once all the details and information is validated, it will be then reported to the FTA. But in case the customer which is located abroad is not onboarded on the PayPal network, then in that case, a dummy endpoint will have to be used. And whatever is the invoice that is being issued, we will have to transmit it to our customer located abroad through the email. Now, in terms of revenue, we will have to clearly see what is the business that is, what is the service that is exactly being provided. And if it's feasible, we can have a one-on-one session wherein we can identify what is the service that is being actually provided, and we can have a discussion about it later.
So I can
Thank
find
you,
another
Tania.
question from from Tamam Rai. He asking, where can we get the list of the approved service provider? Are you the one of them? So I will just clarify, we are not one of them. We are helping the business from selecting one, which is perfect for you. And this list you can find on the e-invoicing portal. There it is already listed over there. So you can find it there.
The next question that we have is from from Mr. Fazil. So they are talking about how about first phase big companies invoicing, second phase SME companies, or vice versa. So just to clarify, as we said, the implementation phase is currently divided into 3 stages. We have the phase 1, which is applicable for the bigger companies. We have the phase 2, which is applicable for the smaller or medium-sized enterprise. So now when we talk about the phase 1 companies, it is those companies having revenue more than that of 50 million, and for them they will have to appoint an ASP by the second half, which is by 31st July 2026, and they will have to start issuing the invoices through the e-invoicing network from the 1st of January. Now, if your end consumers, like as you said, it's a smaller, medium-sized enterprises, for them, anyways, they will have to appoint the ASP by the 31st of March 2027. So ideally, by then, they should have identified who will be their accredited service provider so that they can be onboarded on the network.
So another question is from Kathy. It asks that we are connected to some particular ASP. What if the client wanted to connect with another ASP, however, is not connected with us? It's possible. So yes, it's possible. It's about you. You have to, if you are connected with any particular ASP, your buyer can use any other ASP. It's fine within the listed group. It's not required that you and your buyer also needs to have a same ASP. The same ASP is required within the tax group. So when I was talking about, so the tax group should use the same ASP, not the buyer and the supplier. So if there is a 5 entity in the tax group, all these entities should use the same ASP. Your buyer can use another and you can use another. It is perfectly fine.
Just before you take the next question, we are just displaying over here the email and the phone number in which, so just in case in this Q&A session, if your question is not answered and you would like a slightly more in-depth consultation or information regarding your particular case, the email and the phone number herein is mentioned. You can always reach out to us and ask us those specific questions in case we are not able to cover them in this Q&A session. Sorry, Tanya and Parth, over.
So the next question that we have is from Mercedita. The question is, will the e-invoicing in any way affect the accounting software that our company is using at the moment? So as you know, there will be various, ERP softwares that is being used by the company. So there are two options that is available. Either the software can be integrated with the accredited service provider of your company. In that case, whatever data or information that is being shared between both of them, between the company and the ASP, it will have to be in an agreed format as per the ASP. But in case the systems are not integrated, then once the invoice is being transmitted from the supplier's ERP software to the ASP, it is the responsibility of the ASP to validate all the information and identify whether there are any elements which is laid out by the authorities. Is it missing from the invoice? If it is, then an unsuccessful or a negative message level status will be sent back to the supplier, and they will have to reissue the invoice.
Okay, another question is, if an invoice was not issued on the final day of the month due to lack of supporting documents, please advise if it is permissible to issue it in the first week of the subsequent month within an invoice date reflecting in prior month end. So under the VAT, this thing is covered for the under the time of supply. So we need to check that when the supply has been considered for the VAT, and within the 14 days of time of supply we have to issue the invoice. And if we miss this deadline in any case, if whatever the reason, we have to, the penalty will be applicable for the day we missed it. So the simple thing is, the fundamental is that thing is, ignorance of law is not an excuse anyway. So this is the thing. So yes, this penalty will be applicable if you miss the timeline of 14 days.
The next question that we have is from Mr. Vipin, and it is about, are there only 16 ASPs currently? Now, initially there was only 12 pre-approved service ASPs, and it was yesterday wherein they added additional 4 of them more. So we are expecting that FTA will go on to approve more ASPs in the coming future, because there are a lot of companies out in the UAE for whom e-invoicing will be mandatory. So still the accreditation process is ongoing, and there are a lot of steps involved for any company electing to be an accredited service provider.
So now another question is from Dark. So the question is, if the supplier and the buyer is in a different category based on the revenue limit, what needs to be done? So in this case, say for example, you are the supplier and the customer do not cross the threshold, but you cross the threshold, then e-invoicing regulation will be applicable to you, and you have to issue the e-invoicing regardless of thinking that whether your customer is required to do it or not. It's about the compliance is always about us. It's not about the other people. So you need to think whether this is applicable to you. You need not to think whether it is applicable to other people or not. If it is applicable to you, then you have to follow it. I think we are done with the questions. We are not seeing any further questions here.
And for any additional clarifications required from our end, you can always email your query to the email that is displayed on the screen, and our team of experts will be connecting back with you. Handing it over back to Shubhang to conclude the webinar.
Thank you so much, everyone, to listening to us and peacefully. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I understand some people will still have follow-up questions and other questions relating to their business. And this is something, I mean, we're not necessarily trying to take you on as one of our clients by putting up the email. Actually, send us an email, chat with us on the phone, and we are happy to give you a free consultation and just to have a look at your particular case. Thank you so much, Tania and Parth, for patiently taking us through the entire session. We are actually, as ANA Associate, we are hosting a lot of more sessions in the future. The reason being, right now, during renewals, during business formation, this is the primary question we are getting, and we're really loaded with questions regarding invoicing, bookkeeping. And this is something which is not like 5 years back people used to maintain Excel sheets. Those days are gone, far behind us. So thank you once again, Tanya and Parth. And thank you everyone for joining in today's session. We will keep you updated with future sessions. So whenever we sense that there's a particular topic which is hot right now, or any changes in the regulatory framework, we are sure to come to you with another workshop and webinar. So thank you all once again. Have a lovely week ahead. And once again, thank you, Tania and Parth.
Thank you. Thank you so much.